This is the On Running CLOUDFLOW 4, the lightweight, snappy trainer. But you know what? It's a little more than meets the eye, or maybe not meets the eye, but it's more than what the specs suggest. Let's get into it. Okay, let's get these disclosures out of the way. On Running was good enough to send me the CLOUDFLOW 4 for the purpose of review. However, they're not going to have any editorial input into this video, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, I'm sorry if this video comes across as me being a bit of a fanboy about this shoe. And I think it's because I didn't come into this review with any expectations. This is actually the first On Running shoe that I've run in. And I've got to say that not only was I pleasantly surprised, I was actually blown away by how good this shoe feels. So first of all, let's get started with price. The CLOUDFLOW 4 will cost you $160. I'll leave it up to you to decide on whether or not this is a good deal, but it is right in line with the competitors in the market. So with that in mind, yes, it is priced right. Would I like to see it a little cheaper? Yes, of course, but $160 is right in line with everything else, so can't really complain. But let's get right into this review. And I tell you what, when I was looking at the specs before I got this shoe, what really caught my eye was the stack height. We have 31 millimeters in the heel, 23 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. Now look, 31 millimeters in the heel, that's a pretty good stack height. However, much like you, I would imagine, over the years I've been conditioned to expect higher and higher stack heights. So when I see numbers like 31 and 23, I'm like, oh, is that going to be like just running without shoes? How is that going to feel? Is that going to beat me up when I'm on the run? And the answer, of course, is a resounding no. 31 and 23 is more than enough cushioning to protect you on the run. And I was actually surprised how good and how protected I did feel on the run because I was expecting such a harsher ride. And in fact, the CLOUDFLOW 4 is the exact opposite of a harsh ride. I would actually call it smooth. But we'll talk more about that in just a second. Let's talk about weight, because weight is something that we want to know in all our running shoes. When we're talking about running a little faster, it becomes even more important. So On advertises this shoe as being 8.3 ounces or 235 grams. I imagine that is in a US men's size 9. They don't actually say on the website what size that weight is attributed to, but men's size 9, that's what it usually is, so that's what we'll go with for now. What I can tell you for sure is my size. I wear a US men's size 13, and in my size, the CLOUDFLOW 4 tips the scale at 10.7 ounces or 302 grams. Now, I know those of you with little baby feet are going to think, man, that's so heavy. My friends, it's not. For a shoe in my size, 302 grams is actually really refreshing to run in. It feels light on my foot. Okay, let's start at the top. Let's work our way down. And I want to draw your attention to this heel collar. And you can see here that it's just slightly thinner or slightly less padded than normal. Or I shouldn't say that because there are a lot of shoes now with like zero padding in the heel collar. But as far as shoes with big heel padding in the heel collar, this is on the lower end of that. You know what I'm saying? So we do have plenty of padding around the heel collar, and it is kind of shaped like a bolster. So when you put your foot into the shoe, you get past this upper level of padding, and then the bottom of your foot has a little more room once it's seated. The heel counter is rigid, but it's not totally rigid. We don't have like a rock hard heel counter in there, but it's more than enough to hold my foot in place, and I didn't experience any heel slip at all. The upper is a lightweight woven upper, and look, I'm going to hold this up so you can see. Hopefully the camera will focus on it, but it doesn't look like it's totally breathable, right? The weave is actually quite dense, but my friends, that is absolutely an optical illusion because this is a very thin and very lightweight upper. It is very breathable. In fact, if I put my hand in and I kind of touch this toe area right here, I can feel just how thin it is. Yeah, I know touching it and running in it are two different things, but I have also run in it quite a bit and I didn't experience my feet overheating at all. There is a good amount of airflow in the CLOUDFLOW 4. Now remember, this is a lightweight trainer, so this shoe is ultimately designed for those faster efforts. So when you're doing intervals, when you're doing a tempo run, that is what this shoe is designed for. That is where it's going to excel. But On also took inspiration for this shoe from the Cloudboom Echo 3. And as you already know, the Cloudboom Echo 3 is their super shoe, the fastest shoe that they make. They poured all their best and lightest technology into that shoe, and then they took inspiration and put that into the CLOUDFLOW 4. And as of the making of this video, I haven't run in the Cloudboom Echo 3, and yet I can still feel that inspiration coming through here because this shoe just feels pretty quick underfoot. It feels light, it feels snappy, kind of encourages me to get up and go. Now the tongue is totally race inspired. It's really thin. They're obviously saving a lot of weight here. There is a tiny bit of extra padding. Hold this up. There's a tiny bit of extra padding right here, which is the only spot in the tongue that you actually need it, because these top eyelet chains, these kind of cinch down. This is where you tie the laces, and if you are going to get any lace bite from the laces, this is the position you're going to get it. But even though this tongue is just so wispy thin, I found that this little bit of padding was more than enough to protect the top of my foot from any lace bite. The tongue is gusseted, which we always love to see, and there is a lace loop right in the middle. So all in all, this tongue isn't going anywhere. Once you put your foot in, you're going to get a good midfoot lockdown, and and it just feels really good. There's a lovely step-in feel, and when the shoe is tied on, it just feels like it's part of you. Now, I already said it fits true to size. Now, that's in lengthwise, but if we look at the toe box, I'm actually pretty happy with how much room I have here. I didn't feel constricted at all. Sometimes on some of this shoe's competitors, my foot can feel just a little constricted. You know how companies tend to make their faster shoes and their race shoes just a little narrower. The great thing is I didn't feel that at all. I had plenty of room in my toe box. My toes were breathing nicely. It was just a real treat. Nice to put my foot into. As far as overlays go, well, there really aren't many. There are some more underlays than there are overlays, and I think that's just to give the upper just a little structure and support, but I love how On has kept some smooth lines and a very solid design, in my opinion, on the CLOUDFLOW 4. Got some overlays right around the top eyelet chain and coming around the heel collar on the medial and the lateral side, something right at the back, and of course coming down the eyelet chain on both sides there's just a little bit of support. Something that On has really done well with the CLOUDFLOW 4 is the design. It is very minimalist and yet not too minimalist, you know? So I love how the shoe looks from a distance. It's very pleasing to the eye, but what I really like, I think my favorite aesthetic part of this shoe is actually this eyelet chain. So I'm gonna hold it up, but I'm gonna have to overlay something so you guys can actually get a good look. But these eyelets on the outside, they're kind of more like just little slits rather than circles. And to me, it just looks like a very smooth and aesthetically pleasing way of feeding the laces into the actual shoe. So it doesn't look like you've consciously put an eyelet hole or a loop or something else to tie the laces to the upper. It looks like the laces are actually part of the upper. And then if we come up to the second loop of the eyelet chain, we can see that the laces here actually go under. And I don't know why I'm having such a difficult time describing this, but maybe I should just stop describing it. You guys can see for yourself. There's just something about this eyelet chain that I really like the look of. Also, the tongue has lots of laser drilled holes coming through it just to increase that ventilation, again contributing to just the airy feel of the shoe when it's on your foot. And then back to the underlays for just a second. We do have an underlay, and it's very difficult to see on the camera, but when you feel it, you can actually feel it underneath your finger, and it actually runs all the way around the shoe, just keeping that upper standing up, giving lots of room on the inside and a little structure. Okay, I could talk about how good this shoe looks all day, but I think we have to get into something a little more concrete as to why this shoe feels the way it does underfoot. And ultimately, as always, actually, it comes down to the midsole. On is using their Helion Super Foam. And in this case, the Super Foam is just a foam, right? It's not a supercritical foam, but it does feel pretty good. And I don't think there are any requirements for using the word super. I certainly use super a lot, so we'll just let that go there. This is their Helion Super Foam, and it's a dual density setup. So on this colorway, you can see I've got this green layer of foam here, and then the white layer right underneath with the Cloud Tech clouds right on the base here. Now the Helion foam is a EVA OBC blend, and if you've run in the majority of other on-running shoes, that's the foam that they're using. Now their shoes are going to feel very different because they tweak the formulation in each of their shoes just to give each shoe a different feel. Or I shouldn't say a different feel, but it's the feel that is intended for this shoe. So here we have two different densities of the Helion foam. This green layer on top is a softer version, and then this is slightly firmer on the bottom. Now, the reason they did this, because when you put your foot into a shoe, you want it to feel soft at first touch. You want that step-in feel to just grab you and make you go, wow, this is comfortable. But as we all know, if you've ever run in a shoe that is just a tad too soft, it isn't always the best feeling to run in. And that's why we've got this slightly firmer feeling Helion foam on the bottom. So we've got the comfort on the top, we've got a little firmer on the bottom, and that's just going to provide a feeling of pep. You know, when you're running shoes that are slightly firmer, they just feel a little faster. That energy transfer just feels a little easier. But On hasn't just left it there. It isn't just a dual density setup. They've also put a nylon speed board in between these two layers of foam. So this is a plated trainer. Some of you might be worried, like, Matt, I don't want to run in a plated trainer all the time. And normally I'd say, yeah, I get it. I get how plated shoes can sometimes give you a little plate fatigue and they're not good all the time. But hold on, because I want to show you this. I want to show you the flexibility of this shoe. See that? That is just lovely and flexible. So by showing you that, I'm hoping that you are also picking up on that the speedboard in the CLOUDFLOW 4 is not too stiff. It's in there and it does its job, and it gives a feeling of stability and it gives a feeling of pop when you start picking up the pace. But it isn't one of those plates that you get tired of after you've been running in it for a while. It's actually a really nice setup, and I think On has done a pretty good job at finding that Goldilocks zone with this shoe where it's not too soft, it's not too firm. You've got the pop in the shoe because remember, this is a lighter, fast day shoe without giving you plate fatigue, because, you know, when we go out for these longer runs where maybe we're going to do a fast finish, maybe we want to use this and we don't want to feel exhausted from the shoe before we actually get to the point when you have to pick up the pace. So as I've already mentioned, this shoe is best suited for those intervals, the tempo runs where you're going to be running faster than normal. And I've done those workouts in this shoe. I've done strides, but honestly, the most number of miles that I've put into this shoe have been easy miles. And that's where my biggest surprise has come. I was surprised again because of the stack height, the amount of cushioning that I thought I was going to get didn't actually actually meet what I got. It was a much more protective and softer ride than I expected. And if I'm honest, I was expecting something a little more on the firm end. But again, hits that Goldilocks zone. Let's just come down to the outsole and we can see we've got some exposed midsole here, and then obviously on my colorway you can see the orange right up here on the forefoot, and right here strategically placed, I think they all say it's strategically placed rubber right here on the lateral heel area. And that's just because most of us kind of touch down in that area right there, and I can actually see a little bit of wear already, and I'm seeing just a little bit of wear up on the forefoot. It's actually difficult to tell. I see some wear already, and at this point I've put a little over 50k in this shoe and I am seeing wear. So maybe if you're curious, if you're watching this video like a couple weeks after it's posted, maybe just drop a comment, check back in with me to just have a look at the bottom of my shoe and see how it's holding up. You know, it's holding up all right, but it's still early days, and I am a little surprised to see some wear already. But again, that could be another trade-off. So when you use a denser outsole rubber, that's also affecting the ride. So I know that On Running isn't making shoes just for me, but what they've done here actually works very well for me. I would rather have this softer feeling outsole compound than something a little firmer that like slaps the ground when I'm running. Not really a fan of that. So when I think about some of the competitors for the CLOUDFLOW 4, and I'm sorry if I'm looking past you, I'm looking over at my shoe wall, and I'm thinking the Hoka Mach X, the 361 degrees Flame ST, the Mizuno Rebellion Flash, Boston 12, let's see, the Saucony Endorphin Speed 3, the CLOUDFLOW 4 is actually a big contender, and I would choose this over most of the other shoes that I have that fit the same criteria. You know, I hate to keep coming back to the Endorphin Speed 3, but I think that would be the only true competitor to this shoe, but only if you like a softer ride. The Endorphin Speed 3 is a far softer ride than this, and although this isn't a firm ride when you compare it to the Speed 3, it is slightly firmer. But yeah, if you guys are watching this video and you're looking for a recommendation, I don't think you'll go wrong with the On CLOUDFLOW 4. It really is a solid option, and I will be putting a lot of miles in this shoe. I think this is one of the shoes that I will be taking to over 100 miles, so you can expect a future long-term review at some point. And with that, it's Matt B. This has been my review of the On Running CLOUDFLOW 4. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.